Picture this. Your next ammo run might be more than just a quick stop at the counter. That seemingly simple transaction could now be flagged, tracked, and reviewed by someone you've never seen, and likely never will. This isn't some dystopian theory. It's already gearing up to become reality in a few states across the country, and it's kicking off as soon as next month. States like California, Colorado, and New York are pushing hard for credit card companies to implement new classification codes made specifically for gun and ammunition retailers. So, each time you swipe your card to grab a couple boxes of 12 gauge or some 22 long rifle, your payment gets marked with a unique identifier that ties your purchase to firearms activity. What's troubling here is this doesn't just apply to criminals. This kind of tracking puts ordinary, responsible gun owners, folks who follow the law to a T, under digital surveillance. It's all part of a larger effort to monitor gun-related spending, like never before in the United States. Whether you've been collecting firearms since the 80s, just picked up your first 9mm handgun, or you're just trying to get a handle on what's going on, this is something you need to know about. I've gathered the important dates, legislative updates, and the real-world impact stuff the mainstream media probably won't even touch. Stick with me, and by the end of this video, you'll be ahead of nearly every other American when it comes to understanding how this all works. Now, you'd be surprised how much chaos a little 4-digit number can stir up, but that's what's happening. The issue revolves around something known as a Merchant Category Code, or MCC. Credit card companies have used MCCs for decades to identify types of businesses like a supermarket, hardware store, or gas station. But back in 2023, a brand new MCC was created specifically for shops that deal in firearms and ammunition. That means if you swing by your local gun store to grab a box of 45 ACP or a new sling for your AR, that payment now carries a flag, identifying it as tied to a firearms merchant. On its own, that code may not seem like a big deal, but in practice, it opens the door to broad-scale transaction tracking, behavioral profiling, and possibly even intervention from financial institutions or government entities. This code creates a new trail, one that didn't exist before. It doesn't tell anyone exactly what you purchased, just that you made a purchase at a business associated with firearms. And that's where things start to get messy. Critics of this system say it's ripe for abuse, that it gives banks or bureaucrats the power to target everyday gun owners. Supporters claim it's just another tool to prevent fraud or keep tabs on stockpiling. But wherever you stand on the issue, here's what matters. This MCC isn't theoretical anymore. It's already active, and several states are making its use mandatory starting next month. Let's start with what's happening in California. Assembly Bill 1587, passed in 2024, requires credit card processors to start labeling transactions made at firearms dealers. As of July 1st, anytime you pay for ammunition with a card, whether it's hollow points, buckshot, or bird loads it, gets flagged under the new code. Colorado has gone even further. Senate Bill 2406 not only mandates the use of the firearms MCC, but it also gives the state power to investigate any purchase they consider out of the ordinary. Starting this July, agencies in Colorado will officially begin watching flagged transactions for signs of unusual activity. Then there's New York. Governor Kathy Hochul has gone on record calling this coding system a public safety measure, and state regulators are now requiring banks and payment platforms to fully adopt it. That means if you're buying a set of iron sights, a couple boxes of 10mm, or even just paying range fees, every one of those payments will be labeled under the firearms MCC. Enforcement in New York kicks off in July too. The important thing to understand here is that this isn't about what you're buying, it's about where you're buying it. Once a business is tagged with that MCC, every single swipe at the register, whether it's for gear, ammo, or accessories, is thrown into the same firearms-related basket. And that's the real problem. It creates a wide open lane for financial institutions or political actors to scrutinize your habits, not based on any wrongdoing, but just because you shop at a gun store. While some states are rushing full speed into this new tracking system, over 20 others are digging in their heels and pushing back hard. Places like Texas, Florida, Tennessee, and Montana have already passed laws that outright ban the use of merchant category codes for anything related to firearms or ammunition. Lawmakers in those states see the coding as a clear threat to personal freedom, arguing it amounts to nothing more than a backdoor attempt to create a gun owner database. On the national front, there's movement too, at least in theory. Earlier this year, the Protecting Privacy in Purchases Act was introduced in both chambers of Congress. The goal? Shut down the use of these merchant codes for gun and ammo purchases across the entire country. But right now, that bill is collecting dust in committee. No debates, no votes, and most importantly, no legal weight to stop what's already rolling out at the state level. Here's the big takeaway. Your zip code is about to matter more than ever. If you live in California, New York, or Colorado, your next trip to buy ammunition could be anything but private. One simple swipe of your credit or debit card could turn a routine purchase into a flagged entry in a database, somewhere, one that can be reviewed, cataloged, or even forwarded along. And don't think this is just about major retailers in the cities. It's going to hit regular gun owners right in their hometown shops. In states pushing these codes forward, if you use a card, any card to buy ammo, your purchase will now carry a digital marker that identifies it as a gun-related transaction. Doesn't matter if you're picking up a box of 20 gauge or a bulk pack of 500 rounds of 5.56 NATO. It's going under the new category. Before, that transaction might have been buried under a vague label like sporting goods. Those days are over. This new setup gives banks the green light to scan for patterns, apply flags automatically, and in some states, hand over data directly to law enforcement. And it doesn't stop with the customers. Businesses are on the hook too. If a shop fails to tag their sales with the correct merchant code, they could be hit with civil penalties, some as high as $10,000 for a single mistake. For a small family-run gun store, that's not just a fine, that's a death sentence. What's worse, many of these local dealers are being told to comply without receiving any real help from the credit card processors or state agencies enforcing the change. It's chaos, especially for shops already stretched thin, trying to handle compliance, customer service, and day-to-day operations. Meanwhile, major financial players, some of whom backed away from using these codes in 2023 after facing legal pressure, are now being forced back into the game. The optional phase is done. In these states, it's law. So, if you care about privacy when it comes to your gun purchases, this should be a serious wake-up call. Sure, using cash still leaves no trail. But with digital surveillance expanding and federal interest heating up, the ability to keep your transactions truly anonymous is shrinking by the day. Here's the harsh truth. The overwhelming majority of transactions that will get flagged by these systems aren't tied to criminals. They're coming from average, everyday gun owners, folks picking up ammo for the weekend range trip, restocking their stash, or just doing what they've done legally for years. That's the core problem. This system doesn't focus on bad actors. It casts a wide net over everyone. It's surveillance by default, not by reason. And this isn't a theoretical concern anymore. Starting next month, millions of law-abiding Americans are going to feel the shift. A single tap of a card will mark the difference between a private transaction and one that's tracked, logged, and potentially scrutinized. What we're seeing isn't just a technical update. This is one of the most far-reaching steps toward financial surveillance of lawful gun owners in recent memory, not because of what you're buying, but because of how it's being quietly monitored behind the scenes. Supporters of these merchant codes insist they're neutral tools, meant to catch red flags before something awful happens. Politicians in states like New York and California say it's all about public safety. Governor Hochul has even said The codes could help identify people stockpiling unusual amounts of ammunition. But there's a growing wave of opposition from gun rights advocates to data privacy experts to economists. The real issue isn't about the product, it's about control. Once that code is applied, buyers have zero say in how their transaction is interpreted, flagged, or stored. The system doesn't say you bought 9mm birdshot or a set of snapped caps. It just shows you shopped at a firearms-related business. And that kind of vagueness opens the door wide for misinterpretation by automated systems and overreach by institutions with an agenda. What makes this even more concerning is the lack of any hard legal boundaries on how that information is stored, passed along, or used. In many situations, law enforcement doesn't even need a warrant. As long as a financial institution willingly provides the data, agencies can access bulk purchasing patterns without ever involving a judge. That's how a shadow registry gets built, not by passing a law in Congress, but through quiet cooperation behind the scenes. And make no mistake, it's not just local or state authorities paying attention. Here in Washington, the year 2025 has already seen fresh energy at the federal level, aimed at expanding digital surveillance tools around gun activity. The Protecting Privacy in Purchases Act might be stuck in neutral for now, but the appetite for tracking gun owners is far from dead. Here's the real danger. Once we start accepting the idea that tracking ammo sales is normal or harmless, the door opens wide. What stops that logic from creeping into other constitutionally protected freedoms? What's next? Flagging books, online posts, or donations to pro-Second Amendment groups? What we're witnessing here is a precedent that threatens to normalize quiet censorship and financial targeting of lawful Americans. And that's a red line we can't afford to ignore. There's still a chance to fight back, but the window is closing fast. Starting next month, in a growing number of states, the use of merchant codes for ammo and gun-related transactions won't just be an option. It'll be enforced by law. So the choices you make now could decide whether your purchases remain private or get logged and stored somewhere you'll never see. Want to keep your business off the grid? Cash is still your strongest move. In states where MCC tracking is required, paying with a card, whether it's credit or debit, guarantees that your purchase gets flagged. Cold, hard currency still flies under the radar. If you're living in places like California or New York, or anywhere that has flipped the switch on these merchant codes, cash is your simplest legal shield. Where and when you buy also matters. Since this hasn't been rolled out nationwide, heading to states like Texas, Tennessee, or Montana, places that have already outlawed MCC, use for guns and ammunition, offers a legal and tactical way to avoid being swept into the system. Traveling to a neighboring state and paying in cash is one of the few reliable ways left to protect your privacy. Now, if crossing state lines or using cash isn't on the table, don't think you're out of options. Groups like the National Shooting Sports Foundation, the Second Amendment Foundation, and others are already taking this fight to the courts and lobbying hard to shut it down. They need support, financial and vocal. Reaching out to your representatives matters too. Just because those federal privacy bills are stuck doesn't mean they're dead. Pressure from voters is the only thing that will get them moving again. And don't forget to check your bank activity. There are already confirmed cases where banks flagged or even froze accounts based solely on purchases tied to firearm-related merchant codes, even when those buys were completely legal. At this point, staying informed about what your bank is doing with your data is absolutely essential. This shift we're seeing, it's not just some bureaucratic change, it's the start of a larger trend, one that blends digital surveillance with financial control. The smartest thing you can do right now is stay alert, act with intention, and share this knowledge with other responsible gun owners. Because here's the truth, when privacy disappears, it doesn't always happen with flashing lights and breaking news. Sometimes it vanishes quietly, hidden inside a 4-digit code that no one noticed until it was too late. The line between lawful firearm ownership and financial surveillance is being redrawn as we speak. Your awareness is the first layer of defense. If this video helped open your eyes to what's really going on, hit that like button so others can find it. Subscribe for future updates as the legal fight continues to evolve. And more importantly, send this video to someone you know who buys ammo. Because the biggest weapon this system has is silence.